In this lesson, I'm going to give you a quick overview of some of the different selection tools and how they work. We're going to mainly focus on the marquee tools and the lasso tools. Alright, I'm going to start off with a file that we have. It's called Dead End. And I'm going to zoom into this so you can see what I'm working on. Now, I'm going to show you where it is in the menu, and then I'm going to be using the shortcuts after that, mainly because now you know where the zoom is. So if I go to File, View, Zoom In, you'll notice that I move in here, just like this. If I choose Fit on Screen, it will fit the image in however much space I have. And for me, I'm going to be using the Control plus and minus on my keyboard. For me, it seems to work very well, and I'm just used to it, so habit there. But now you'll know where it is. It's under View, and then right here in these areas. All right, so the first tool that we're going to talk about is the standard marquee tool, or also known as a rectangular marquee tool. And the way this works is you just click and drag, and you create what's called a marquee. Now, these little lines that you see here, those are also known as marching ants, and it really defines where your boundary is. So there's a number of things that we can do with this. Again, if I click and drag, I can create any type of rectangular shape. Okay. But if I hold down Shift, what I get is a perfect square. And that's really nice when you're trying to make very sharp selections that you know need to be in a square shape. Now there's a number of things that you can do. First of all, you notice that when I click and I drag, my mouse or my marquee starts where my mouse was initially pressed right here, and then it goes to wherever I end up. Well, sometimes in things like this sign, you may want to actually start from the center. If that's the case, press Alt, click and drag, and you'll notice that you can create a marquee with the center being the starting point, which that's kind of nice as well. So you can do something like that. Now, if you want to get real fancy, you can actually, instead of just holding down Alt, also hold down Shift. And when you do that, you will get a perfect square that starts from the center and goes out, which that's very useful as well. Now, why is it important to make a selection? Well, watch what happens. Let's say we select just the top half of this sign, and I go up to something like Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. Okay? Gaussian Blur is one of the best blurs that Photoshop has. So here's why we're doing selections. In this case, I'm only blurring half the sign. Maybe I wanted to make just this sign and blur it, or maybe blur everything in the background. Well, we could do that quite easily. All we have to do is make the correct selection. Now, maybe you have round objects. So the next option we'll talk about is the elliptical marquee tool. Now, the elliptical marquee tool works just like the rectangular marquee tool. Okay, if you click and drag, you get these kind of oval shapes or ellipses. If you hold down Shift, you will actually get a nice perfect circle. Okay, and the same options work here. If I press Alt, I can start from the center and go out, and if I hold Shift, I can also make that a perfect circle. So that's very nice as well. Now there's a few options that I haven't shown you yet that I think are pretty important. And that's this concept of taking parts of this selection out or adding parts. Sometimes it's easier to just make quick selections and then go back and refine. So in this case, I have a round or elliptical marquee. And let's say I wanted to take one big chunk out of this. Well, with my marquees tool still selected, and I have a marquee, all I have to do is hold down Alt, and you notice I get a little minus on my cursor. Well, that's telling you that whatever I do now will be subtractive. So I'll click and drag, and now I've got a shape cut out. If I press Shift, I can actually add a portion to this shape or this selection, which is kind of nice. Now, what if I wanted to do what we call an intersection, which is I only want the part that's inside of this particular marquee that I'm just now drawing. Well, to do that, you press Alt and Shift, and watch what I end up with. This was just the little part that was left inside of that marquee selection. So it's a really incredible set of tools. And like I said, it's fast to learn, but it takes forever to master. So it's one of those that, go ahead and start practicing and playing with it now. Now there's one more set of selection tools that I want to show you before we get into some of the more advanced ones. And this selection tool set is this lasso tool. Now the basic lasso tool, you just click and drag and you make any shape that you want, and that's going to be the selection. So if you have a very steady hand, you can go all the way around and make this selection. Okay? So if you want to just roughly select, there you go. Now, if you want to have a little bit more control over your straight lines, you can utilize this polygon lasso tool. Now, the way this works, let me just zoom into a portion here, is you click, okay, and when you let go of your mouse, it will set an anchor point. And then you click again, and it sets another anchor point, and again, and you just keep going. Remember, the fewer the lines, the smoother it will be. And when you get close, you'll have a little O appear on your actual cursor, and that's to let you know that you will close that polygon lasso, or any lasso at that point. So that is an easy way of going in here and getting these kinds of shapes. So let's look at how we can actually create this easy selection using these tools. There's one more tool that I want you to be aware of, and this is a really fantastic tool for making these types of selections. It's called the magnetic lasso tool, and it's called the magnetic lasso tool because it will stick to whatever you're trying to make a selection of. So let's zoom in here. All right, and the shortcut I'm using to zoom in is Control and Spacebar. If I press that, you get this little magnifying glass. Remember, you can still press Control plus and zoom in or zoom out, and you can also go up here to View, Zoom in, Zoom out, just like we did earlier. All right, with this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start clicking, and I'm just going to start dragging. And if you're nice and careful, you can actually go all the way around, and you notice it magnetically picks up. You just got to get it close. And if you go far away like that, let's just go ahead and close this. If you go far away like that, not a problem. We can just come in and trim that part out using some of our other tools. So, for example, if I come in and I press Alt, click, 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 come out here and then close it, double click to close, you notice I just removed all that extra material that I accidentally grabbed. So, I would highly recommend that you take a second to practice some of your selection techniques on this particular file. You might try doing some basic selections like selecting just this actual bolt. Let's scroll down here. You can try this one. You can try doing different selections, like let's say you only wanted to select the N, and so you can go in with the lasso tool. Maybe on this D, you would want to use the magnetic lasso tool. So again, practice your selections. Let's zoom out here. One thing that I did not show you is how do you deselect something? Well, there's a couple ways to do that. The easiest way, in my opinion, is if you click anywhere outside of that selection, just click once, you will deselect. So if you have something selected, click deselect. The shortcut, or actually up here in the menu, is you just come up here to select, deselect, if you don't want that anymore. Or if you have a selection, you can press Control D, and that will deselect as well. Now, sometimes it can become a hassle to use these different sliders to move your image around. If you want to, what we call pan your image around, which is essentially move these little sliders, hold down your space bar, and you'll get this little hand. And when you click and drag, you can actually move this image around. You're not actually picking up the image and moving it, you're just essentially adjusting these sliders. Okay? So that's a quick look at selections. In the next lesson, we're actually going to take a look at how to use a selection tool, essentially called a quick select tool. And by using this tool, we'll be able to go in and make a really great selection, totally automatic, and then use that to do some edits and some tweaks.